I'd been driving all night, just trying to get home. No music, no calls, just the steady hum of the road and the rhythmic flash of white lines beneath my headlights. It was close to 2 a.m., somewhere between the city and the middle of nowhere. The kind of stretch of highway where every exit looks the same. One dim gas station, one soda machine, and a parking lot full of shadows. I wasn't even planning to stop, but my fuel light came on, and when I saw that flickering sign up ahead, Miller's Service, open 24 hours, I decided to pull in. The air changed the second I rolled off the highway. No sound but the wind and the buzzing of old fluorescent tubes hanging above the pumps. The light felt cold, like it was fighting against the dark instead of pushing it back. I stepped out, and the air was colder than it should have been for summer. There was this faint smell, damp dirt and gasoline, and a dog barking somewhere far away. No other cars, no movement, just me and that old building. As I started pumping gas, I noticed one of the glass doors had a closed sign hanging crookedly behind it, even though the other said open. It swayed gently, even though there wasn't any wind. For a moment, I caught myself staring at the glass, expecting to see someone inside. But there was only the reflection of the pumps and the dark highway behind me. Then I heard a click. The gas nozzle stopped. That's when I felt it, like someone was watching me. I glanced toward the tree line behind the station. At first, I thought it was just the shape of a branch or maybe a shadow, but no. There was a figure standing just beyond the light. Still, too still. I blinked and it was gone. My heart gave this little kick, but I told myself I was just tired. Highway fatigue, imagination playing tricks. Happens to everyone who drives too long at night. I finished pumping, screwed the cap on, and forced myself to breathe normally. Inside, the little bell over the door jingled. The place was smaller than I expected. Half the shelves empty, the rest stacked with old snacks and dusty soda bottles. The air smelled like rubber and burnt coffee. Behind the counter stood a man in his late 50s, maybe early 60s. Thin, pale, with a sunken look, like he hadn't slept in days. When I said, "Evening," he didn't answer, just nodded slightly and started scanning my drink without looking up. I tried to make small talk. "Quiet night, huh?" he said. "Flat?" "Usually is." That was it. But what made it worse was the way his eyes flicked, not to me, but to something behind me, like he was watching something move near the door. I turned around. Nothing there. The bell over the door had stopped swinging. And then, the security monitor caught my eye. Old CRT screen, grayscale, mounted high behind the counter. The feed was cycling through 4 cameras: the lot, the door, the side alley, and the highway. On one of them, the one pointed toward my car, I saw something that made my stomach tighten. My car door was open, wide open, and standing next to it, halfway in shadow, was that same figure I'd seen by the trees. Tall, thin, motionless, just standing there, facing the camera. I turned to the clerk, and for the first time, he looked directly at me. He didn't say a word, just gave a slow, almost imperceptible shake of his head. When I looked back, the monitor glitched, static rippling across the screen. By the time it cleared, my car door was closed again. But the figure was gone. For a second, I couldn't move. I just stood there, staring up at that grainy monitor, waiting for the image to flicker back, waiting for proof that what I saw was real. But the screen stayed clear, my car door shut, empty lot. I forced a laugh, the kind you give yourself when you're trying to sound normal. "Guess I left it open," I muttered. The clerk didn't reply. He just stared at me, expression blank, like he was waiting for me to leave. Something about his silence got under my skin. I swiped my card, grabbed my receipt, and said, "Thanks." Nothing, not even a nod. The bell over the door jingled again as I stepped out. The air hit me cold, colder than before, and everything was too still. No crickets, no wind, no barking dog, just that faint hum from the streetlight and the slow creak of the sign above the door. My car sat where I left it, alone under the buzzing light. The driver's door was shut, exactly how it should be. I circled around it anyway, heart pounding hard enough to hurt. No footprints now, no movement near the tree line. But when I crouched down, I noticed something on the ground. A faint trail of muddy prints leading away from my car toward the side of the building, like someone had walked there barefoot. They stopped near the edge of the fog and disappeared. I swallowed, unlocked the car, and climbed in fast. Doors locked, Engine started, headlights on. My hands were shaking. I didn't even realize I'd left my drink on the counter inside. The second those headlights cut through the fog, I felt safer, or at least I told myself I did. But as I pulled out of the lot, I saw the clerk through the window. He was still standing at the register, watching me drive away. Didn't move, didn't blink, just watched. I didn't even make it half a mile before something else happened. The radio cracked with static, sharp and loud, like someone had just ripped through the frequency. Then it cut out completely. Silence. I glanced at the dash, all normal, fuel gauge full, speed steady. And then, in the corner of my mirror, I saw movement, something shifting in the back seat. It wasn't clear, just a shape, pale and still, like someone leaning forward slowly. Every instinct told me not to look, but I did. I whipped my head around, and the seat was empty. I pulled over hard, gravel kicking up behind me. Heart hammering, breath stuck halfway between a gasp and a choke. Nothing. I turned on the cabin light, checked the back seats, the floor, even the trunk latch from inside. Empty. I told myself it was exhaustion, that I'd been driving too long, seeing things. I shut the light off, took a few deep breaths, and merged back onto the road. But then I noticed something that didn't make sense. My rearview mirror, it wasn't reflecting the inside of my car anymore. All I could see was fog. Thick, gray, endless fog. Even though my headlights were slicing through it ahead, behind me it was pure white like a wall. And in that fog, something faint moved again. A figure. Tall, thin, just standing in the road behind me. I pressed harder on the gas. 50, 60, 70. Didn't matter. It stayed there, perfectly still, perfectly centered in that mirror. Like the car was moving, but it wasn't getting any farther away. My eyes burned. My chest felt like it was caving in. I hit the high beams, blinked, looked again, and it was gone. Nothing but empty highway. I drove for another hour without stopping. No music, no calls, just the hum of the engine and the occasional pop of bugs on the windshield. By the time I saw the lights of my town, the world felt normal again. The fog was gone. The sky was clear. I pulled into my driveway around 4. When I got out, I glanced once more into the back seat, half expecting to see something waiting, but it was empty. Spotless, like none of it had happened. I went inside, locked the door, and didn't sleep until the sun came up. Weeks passed. I didn't tell anyone, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know how to explain it. How do you describe something you're not even sure you really saw? But then, about 3 weeks later, I took my car in for a detail. When the guy popped the trunk, he called me over. "Hey man," he said, "you been driving through mud or something?" I frowned. "No. Why?" He pointed and I saw it. Right there, pressed into the inside of the trunk lid, was a muddy handprint. Smudged, thin but unmistakable, fingers spread wide, palm deep in dirt. I stared at it, heart starting to race all over again. The detailer laughed it off, said it was probably for me loading something dirty. But I hadn't. I never put anything in that trunk. And when I ran my hand over the print, I realized something else. It wasn't old. The mud was still slightly damp. I didn't say a word. Just told him to finish up, paid, and drove straight home. That night, I sat in my driveway with the headlights off, staring at the gas gauge glowing faintly on the dash. And for the first time since that night, I realized something that made my stomach twist. When I stopped for gas, I never actually heard the pump click back on. It had stopped mid-fill. And yet, somehow, I'd driven hundreds of miles on a full tank. So I don't know what I saw that night, or who, or what, was standing by my car. But one thing's for sure, I'll never stop at a rural gas station again, because sometimes, when you think you're alone out there, something else might be waiting by the exit. Story 2. The car that wouldn't let me pass. It started around midnight. The highway was empty. That kind of eerie emptiness where the world feels like it's holding its breath. I was heading home after visiting a friend a few towns over. The air outside was cold, the road stretched straight for miles, and the only sound in the car was the faint hum of static from the radio. I remember glancing into the rearview mirror and noticing headlights in the distance. Nothing unusual, just another car, way back, steady, unhurried. But then, 10 minutes passed, and the headlights were still there. Same distance, same lane, no attempt to pass, no sign of slowing down. I brushed it off at first. Highway coincidence. But then 20 minutes passed. 30. Every turn I took, Every small curve, every dip, the car stayed perfectly behind me, like it was tethered to my bumper. At some point, I turned down the radio, just to make sure I wasn't missing something, but all I heard was the low hum of my tires on the asphalt and my own breathing. That's when the curiosity started to twist into unease. I slowed down just a little, to see what they'd do. And the moment I did, their headlights dimmed slightly. They slowed too. No passing, no turning off, just matching me. I tried to ignore it, humming quietly to keep myself calm. The kind of humming you do when you don't want to admit you're scared. After another few miles, I took a deep breath and decided to test it again. I flicked my right blinker on, pretended like I was taking the next exit, and at the last second, I stayed on the main road. The car did the same thing. It followed. Now I was sure. Something wasn't right. The rearview mirror glare hit me straight in the eyes, so bright I could barely make out the shape of the vehicle. But I noticed something. The license plate was covered in dirt, unreadable. I thought about pulling into a rest stop, but every sign I passed pointed to dark, empty exits that looked worse than the highway itself. That's when the first strange thing happened. My hazard lights blinked once, by themselves. Just one click, a flash of orange reflected off the road. Then nothing. I frowned and tapped the button, thinking I'd brushed it accidentally, but it didn't respond. Dead. Then my phone buzzed once and went black. Battery drained from 40% to 0 in seconds. I stared at the blank screen, whispering to myself, "What the hell?" The air in the car felt heavier. The headlights behind me seemed closer now, way closer. Too close. Every time I looked up, they filled the mirror. I gripped the wheel tighter, my knuckles pale in the dim dashboard glow. I took a random exit, my heart pounding. It curved down into a narrow two-lane road that cut through the woods. No lights, no signs of life. For a second I thought I'd lost them. The mirror was empty. I actually laughed out loud. This nervous, shaky laugh. Relief. But when the road turned, I caught it again. The glow of two headlights, far behind, sliding through the trees like eyes. They'd followed me. Again. I pressed harder on the gas. The engine whined. The road wound tighter, the forest closing in on both sides. Then, out of nowhere, the gas gauge dropped. Half a tank gone in less than a minute. The needle kept sinking, faster than it should, like something was bleeding the fuel out. I glanced back. The car was closer now, maybe 50 yards. I could almost make out the outline of the front grille. The road opened briefly, and I took a sudden U-turn back toward the main highway. My tires screeched, gravel spraying into the dark. When I looked again, the headlights followed, perfectly smooth. Not even slowing for the turn. My breathing came fast and uneven. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe it was some late-night trucker. Maybe someone lost. Maybe I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew this wasn't normal. I checked the dashboard clock. 1:13 a.m. The road signs blurred past. Exit 12, exit 11, exit 9. Each one looking more desolate than the last. And then I saw a sign I'd never noticed before. A metal arrow bent slightly forward, pointing to a narrow off-ramp. It flashed in my headlights for a split second before I could read it. Dead end. The paint looked fresh. Too fresh. And as I passed it, I realized something that made my stomach twist. I hadn't seen any other cars for nearly an hour. Not one. Just that same pair of headlights. Following. I slowed down again, hoping to force them to pass me, to show me they were real. But they didn't. The car stayed there, perfectly aligned behind me, like a mirror image, locked in. And when I blinked, for just half a second, the lights flickered. Not like a bulb dying, but like static on a TV. Glitching. When they came back, they were even closer. The moment those headlights flickered back on, something in me snapped. I couldn't take it anymore. I slammed on the brakes. My seatbelt caught hard across my chest, the tires screeched, and my car lurched to a stop in the middle of that empty two-lane stretch. For a heartbeat, everything went still. Then the headlights behind me did the same. Sudden stop, perfectly mirroring mine. We sat there, two cars in the dark, engines humming softly under the hum of the wind. I stared at them in my mirror, squinting into the glare. It felt like staring into someone's eyes, except these eyes didn't blink. I don't know what made me do it, but I threw the gear into park, opened my door, and stepped out. The air was freezing, the kind of cold that cuts straight through your jacket. I took a few steps toward the back of my car, one hand shielding my eyes. The headlights didn't move. "Hey," I called out. "What's your problem?" My voice sounded small out there, like the dark swallowed it. No response. Just the low idle of an engine I couldn't quite hear. More like I could feel it, faint vibrations under the asphalt. I took another step, another, and then the lights went out. Both, at the same time. Instant, total blackness. I froze. Not even my own shadow existed anymore. Just the sound of my breathing and that awful silence pressing down from the trees. "Hello?" I tried again, my voice cracking. Nothing. I turned back toward my car, and for one disorienting second, I couldn't see it either. Just fog. Thick, rolling fog that hadn't been there before, sliding in across the road like it had been waiting. When I finally found my car again, I ran for it, slammed the door, locked it, and started the engine. The headlights flicked on automatically, and my heart nearly stopped. Because the road in front of me, the direction I'd been facing before, was empty. No sign of the other car, no taillights, no tracks. It was like it had never existed. I sat there shaking, staring at that empty stretch for a long minute before I finally whispered, "No, no, no, no." I pressed the gas and tore down the road, desperate to find the highway again. Any sign of civilization, any light at all. The road wound on, unfamiliar now. The trees on both sides looked the same, repeating endlessly. And then, through the fog, I saw something up ahead. Headlights. But this time, they weren't behind me. They were in front, facing me, coming closer. I hit the brakes, the tires skidding across damp asphalt. The lights didn't swerve, didn't slow. They were moving fast, too fast, straight toward me. I flicked my high beams once, trying to signal, but the moment I did, my engine died. All of it. Dashboard black, radio silent. The car rolled to a stop. I tried the ignition. Nothing. The headlights ahead stopped too, maybe 50 feet away, and then began to inch closer, slow this time. No sound, no engine hum, just the soft crunch of gravel under invisible tires. I wanted to move, to run, but I couldn't. It was like something heavy pressed against my chest, rooting me to the seat. The headlights flared bright enough to blind me, pure white filling the windshield. And just when I thought they'd crash into me, they blinked out. Darkness. Total silence. And then I heard it. A soft tap from the rear window. Once, then again, like fingertips brushing the glass. I turned slowly, the sound of my own pulse drowning everything else. The back seat was empty, but the tapping continued. I could see the glass fogging slightly, like someone was breathing on it from the outside. I screamed, started the ignition again, slammed the pedal down, and this time it roared back to life. I didn't look back, didn't care about the road. I just drove. Miles blurred by, the fog thinned, and eventually the horizon began to lighten, the faint gray of dawn breaking through the trees. When I finally hit a main highway again, I saw the lights of a gas station up ahead. I pulled in shaking, parked crookedly, and just sat there, trying to catch my breath. The attendant came out to check on me, asked if I was okay. I told him, or tried to, about the car, the headlights, the fog. He looked at me strangely, then said, "You're the first car I've seen come through here in hours. Roads are empty tonight." I didn't argue. I just asked for a tow truck. My car was making strange noises now, sputtering like it was gasping for air. When the tow finally came, the driver loaded it up and took it to a mechanic a few towns over. I followed in his cab, exhausted, still shaking. The mechanic met us in the morning light, clipboard in hand. He popped my hood, checked the systems, glanced at the mileage. Then he frowned. "Are you sure this is your car?" he asked. I blinked at him. "What do you mean?" He turned the clipboard around and pointed at the record. "Your car's been parked here for 3 days. We haven't even touched it." I stared at him, mouth dry. Then I looked back at the car. My car, sitting in the lot. Same make, same model, same plate, but the dirt patterns on the doors were different. And the gas gauge read empty. The mechanic handed me my keys and said, almost nervously, "Maybe you should get some rest, man." I didn't argue. I got in, closed the door, and sat there. The air inside was cold, faintly damp. And when I glanced in the rearview mirror, just for a second, I could have sworn I saw 2 headlights behind me, faint and distant, glowing in the reflection. Then they blinked once and disappeared. I never drive long stretches at night anymore, and I don't trust my mirrors the same way I used to. Because sometimes when you think someone's following you, they might not be behind you at all. Story 3. The Voice on the CB Radio. I've been driving trucks for nearly 15 years. I've seen just about everything this country's highways can throw at you. Busted tires, deer in the road, crazy weather, even the occasional drunk driver weaving through the lanes at 3 a.m. But the one thing I can't explain, the one thing that still keeps me from driving nights anymore, started on a desert route just past the Nevada line. It was a little after 2 in the morning. The road stretched flat and empty, a pale ribbon through miles of open sand. The sky above me was clear, stars sharp as pinpricks, the moon low and cold. Inside the cab, everything felt muted. The soft rattle of loose coins in the cup holder, the hum of the tires, the faint static of the CB radio, half-tuned to channel 19, the one most truckers use to shoot the breeze on long hauls. Only that night, there was no one else on the air, just the static. I took a sip of coffee, found it empty, and sighed. The next truck stop wasn't for at least 40 miles. I leaned back, one hand on the wheel, the other drumming against my knee, trying to keep myself awake. And that's when it happened. A voice broke through the static, soft, crackled, right between the bursts of white noise. "You're not alone out there." I sat up straight, frowning. The sound came so suddenly it jolted me. I grabbed the mic. "Breaker 19, who's this? That you, Roger? You messing with me again?" Nothing. Just the static again. Long, hollow, endless. I switched channels, figuring it was some bored kid on a skip line. The desert has a way of bouncing signals from God knows where, sometimes hundreds of miles off. But before I could even finish scanning through the next band, the same voice came back, softer now. "Closer, don't switch away, Dale." I froze. That's my name, but I hadn't said it. Not once since I keyed the mic. My hand hovered over the radio, every hair on my arm standing straight up. "Who is this?" I asked, my voice low. Static hissed back, a long drawn-out wave of noise that filled the cab like a whispering crowd. Then the voice came again, more distorted, like it was being dragged through miles of broken wires. "You should have stayed en route." I glanced at the GPS. My route was normal, same desert run I'd made dozens of times before. The signal cracked again, louder this time. Then, almost playfully, "You're not alone." I flicked the radio off completely. For a few seconds there was silence. Only the steady hum of the engine and the rhythmic flash of the yellow lines under my headlights. Then the radio turned itself back on. The volume knob twisted slowly on its own, clicking faintly as it rose. A low hiss filled the cab. I grabbed the mic, shouting, "All right, whoever you are, knock it off." No response. I slammed the unit off again, this time yanking the power cord out of the socket. But even then, faintly through the unplugged speaker, I heard it. 9. The voice was counting. I stared at the radio, disbelief freezing me in place. 8. The dashboard lights flickered. My temperature gauge jumped, spiked red like the engine was overheating, but the engine sounded fine. 7. I checked the mirrors. Far behind me, maybe half a mile, a pair of headlights glowed faintly through the heat haze. 6. The voice got louder, the static thicker, like heavy breathing. 5. I slammed the accelerator, the truck roaring louder as the desert blurred past. The headlights behind me didn't shrink, they matched my speed perfectly. 4. I could feel my pulse thudding in my ears. I reached for my phone, but the screen was black, completely dead, even though I'd had it plugged into the charger. 3. The air inside the cab dropped in temperature, like someone had opened a freezer door. My breath fogged up the windshield. 2. I shouted into the darkness. "Who the hell are you?" The voice went silent. For a moment, I thought it was over. Then, a whisper so faint it sounded like it came from right behind me. 1. The whisper echoed through the cab like it had been spoken right beside my ear. Then, silence. Just the sound of my tires on the asphalt, the faint creak of the steering wheel under my grip, and the wind outside. I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until my chest started to ache. I glanced in the mirror. Those headlights were gone. Completely. The stretch of road behind me was empty, black as ink. No cars, no glow on the horizon. Just miles and miles of desert. I told myself it had to be a trick of the signal. Maybe someone spoofing CB frequencies, some weirdo pulling a prank. But I couldn't shake the sound of that voice, the way it had known my name. I drove another 10 miles before pulling into an old service lot just off the main road. One of those dirt clearings where truckers sometimes rest. The place was abandoned, the signage long faded, The only light came from my high beams reflecting off a half-buried road marker. I threw the truck into park and just sat there, heart hammering. Silence. Not even crickets. The desert had gone dead quiet. I was debating whether to call dispatch when I heard it. Knock. Knock. 2 slow, deliberate knocks on the back of the trailer. I froze. It wasn't the wind, it was solid, heavy. Someone, or something, had hit the metal twice. I killed the engine. The moment the rumble died, the air felt unnaturally still. I grabbed my flashlight from the glove box and stepped out. The desert air was cold and sharp. Gravel crunched under my boots as I circled to the rear of the trailer. The beam of my flashlight trembled in my hand, cutting through the dust. Nothing. Just the long, silver wall of the trailer, dull under the moonlight. I walked closer. The metal was frosted, a thin layer of condensation like it had just come from a freezer. But I was hauling dry goods. That shouldn't have been possible. Then I saw something that made my stomach twist. Across the back doors, in the dust and frost, were handprints. Not full ones, just the outlines of fingers, dragged downward. Like someone had pressed their hands there and slowly slid them down. I shone my light across the ground. No footprints, just tire tracks. Mine. My throat went dry. I took a step back, trying to think, trying to breathe, when the trailer doors clicked. That heavy latch, the one I'd locked myself back in Utah, shifted. Once, twice. Then, clack. The door eased open half an inch on its own. I aimed the light into the gap. Pitch black. I told myself not to. But I grabbed the handle and pulled it open. The door swung wide with a metallic groan. The beam of my flashlight caught only emptiness. No cargo, no boxes. The entire trailer was bare. I'd loaded 30 sealed pallets that morning. I'd signed the manifest myself. Now, just empty metal walls. The air inside was colder than outside, so cold it fogged when I breathed out. That's when I heard it again, faint, almost under the hum of the flashlight. "You're not alone." The voice came from inside the trailer. I stumbled back, nearly dropping the light. Then from deep inside the empty space, a static crackle. The CB radio, the one I'd unplugged. I turned toward the cab, and through the windshield I saw the radio light up, glowing faintly red. And through that soft red flicker, movement. Someone was sitting in the driver's seat, a silhouette, shoulders hunched, head tilted slightly toward the radio. I could just make out their outline against the glow of the dash. Every instinct screamed at me to run. Instead, I forced myself forward, half expecting to find some stranger who'd broken in. I yanked the cab door open. Empty. The seat was cold. The keys were still in the ignition, and the radio, still unplugged, buzzed faintly. The voice returned, distorted and broken. "Turn around." I did. The trailer door, the one I'd left open, was now shut tight. My heart nearly stopped. Then from behind that closed door came the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, inside the trailer. They stopped right at the door. Then, just like before, knock, knock. I didn't wait this time. I jumped back into the cab, slammed the locks down, and hit the ignition. The engine roared to life, but the radio screamed with static, louder than before, rising in pitch until it sounded like something alive. I tore out of that lot, tires kicking up clouds of dust. The static finally cut off after a mile, replaced by a soft whisper through the speakers. 0. Then silence. I drove straight through until morning. Didn't stop, didn't look back. By the time I hit the next checkpoint, my hands were shaking so bad I could barely hand over the log sheet. The guy at the weigh station gave me a weird look. Said my trailer was empty. I told him that wasn't possible. I'd loaded it myself. He shrugged and said, "It's clean, man. Nothing in there but air." They never found the missing cargo. That was my last night haul. Now I only drive local. Daylight routes, short distances. But sometimes, when I'm parked too long, when the truck's off and the world outside is dead quiet, I hear that faint crackle start again. Just static at first. Then, the softest voice buried deep inside the noise, 10. Those were just a few of the true night drive horror stories shared by people like you. Next time you're out on an empty stretch of highway and the radio starts to hiss, maybe, just maybe, don't look too long in the rearview mirror.